Okay, great.
Okay, great.
Oh, okay, great. I think we're good to go, and hopefully there will not be an echo from the live stream. Um, Welcome everyone to Poets in Pajamas, episode 169, featuring the fantastic work of Joshua Garcia and S.J. Huerta. We are a little monthly reading series brought to you by Sundress Publications, and we are in service of making poetry comfy and cozy and convenient from your own couch, and to be watched in perpetuity online on YouTube and Facebook and anywhere else you possibly could. We will start off with two back-to-back readings from Joshua and SG, each being about 20 minutes or so. And thereafter, we will have a Q&A. So get your little pens out, write down some questions for our fabulous guests, and ask them then. Although without further ado, we will hop into our first reader, that being one Joshua Garcia. Joshua Garcia is the author of Pentimento from Black Lawrence Press, 2024. His poetry has appeared or is forthcoming in Ecotone, the Georgia Review, Passages North, Ploughshares, and elsewhere. He holds an MFA from the College of Charleston and has received a Stadler Fellowship from Bucknell University and Emerge Surface B Fellowship from the Poetry Project. He lives and writes in Brooklyn, New York. Joshua, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and for having me. Aslan and Gardner, thank you. I want to thank Sundress Publications, who hosts Poets in Pajamas. I was actually at Sundress's Firefly Farms at a residency there when I settled on the title for Pentimento. So Sundress has a special place in my mind when I think about the journey of this book. So my book is called Pentimento. For those of you who may not know, Pentimento comes from an Italian word meaning to repent, and it is used in art, particularly in painting, to describe instances when an earlier composition is seen through the final layers of paint. So if an artist paints a gesture here and then decides to paint over it, changes their mind, but you still see traces underneath, that would be the pentimento. And that, in large part, is what my book is about, that kind of personal revision in life. So I'm going to start with a poem from toward the end of the book that I think depicts this idea of pentimento well. It's called Gloria. The woman who cuts my hair asks me if I am a Christian as we talk about water. With my eyes closed, she turns my head in her hands, and we list its healing features. It cleans, she says. It washes away, I tell her. I am leaving for the north soon. I will live by a river. She lives 10 minutes from the beach and will never let it go. I close my eyes when she touches my neck so I may map the minutia of another's touch, store it away for later. But I don't like the water at night, she says. You never know what's out there. I don't tell her that I prefer it. The power of the dark galloping in, its vastness, or emptiness, its violence even. No horizon to level our understanding, only sound and the sense that something is coming and going at once. I'm Baptist, she says. I've been that, I tell her. She talks about Jesus, Malcolm X, and the good Islam has done for her sister. But it's all about Jesus for me. For me. We dance around it, but she comes back to the question, are you a Christian? I don't know how to answer. Once a denial would have been impossible. Now I feel a crow rising in my throat like a mourning. Yet she recognized something that remains, a shadow left in the sand before the tide rushes in to swallow it again. So a big part about my book is my experience of faith as a queer person. And when I started writing this collection, I considered myself a really devout Christian and was in that time constantly wrestling with how that intersected with my queerness. And something that really comforted me during that time was this kind of mystic tradition of thinking of Christ as a spousal figure and having an intimate relationship with Christ spiritually in that way. So this next poem is kind of about that, and it has a bleeding title, so the title bleeds into the poem. Your body, like mine, stank at the end of long hot days, and must have stirred at the sight of certain bodies. You too fell ill, and as your fevers broke, whimpered, shiny and writhing as an exiled fish. I run palms down goosebumped skin in the cold of naked mornings and wonder, do I animate hunger in the stomachs of men? Will some morning I be collected by the handful and brought to a prayerful tongue to trace away my imperfections? Surely you looked in awe at the machinations of your flesh and wondered how and if someone would someday receive you. Did you know then what would become of the body that opened for you to experience this world? Of the arms and legs and buttocks that moved you through it, the neck that turned, the ears that heard, the muscles that tightened after hard work and which would be stretched to the point of becoming a door. Your chest, like mine, emptied at the not knowing. Or did you know? I am told you knew the temptations, the blemishes, the pain of men. Did you know the joys too? The sweet rush of the ocean's pull, the breath of flowers mingling, the knot in your stomach loosened. Could you feel then the whispering thirst in our mouths as we cross forehead and lip and breast, weaving for ourselves a veil that you might lift? Um, the next poem, thank you for the silent snaps. I love a good snap. The next poem I'm going to read is an epistolary poem that I wrote in a poetry exchange with my good friend Maggie Boyd Hare. There are a number of poems in my collection that come from that exchange. And so this poem is actually a response to one that Maggie wrote first. And it's called Epistle Deluge. I too find myself peering into windows at dusk, catching glimpses of the little worlds illuminated inside, boxed up alternatives to the wondering that wears the soles of my feet. Last night, a friend asked me, what is the difference between building walls and setting boundaries? I think it's something to do with a sealing off versus a conversation or an allowance for breath. This morning, my phone tells me James, 52, viewed my profile 6 hours ago from Charlotte, North Carolina, and it strikes me that while I slept, he must have held my face in his hands, glowing under his inevitable judgment. I don't know what these windows offer me except for parameters in which all my fears may safely exist, looking back at me from corners I can trace with my fingers. You wrote that you try not to spend all your time looking for pain, but I have found it and cannot look away. Do you ever see a rainbow and wonder if it really is a promise that we will not be destroyed? I have been making this promise to myself, but maybe condemnation and preservation arc their backs together like different stripes of the same bow. The flood, the quieted bleats of all those animals, an olive branch, Noah's pale flesh blossoming under the eyes of a younger man. I have been asking myself whether I still believe in God, and though I don't have an answer, I remember the moment the question first formed, sounding inside me like a firework cracking in the distance, opening like a pocket of air, rising to the water's surface to meet more of itself. Thanks. So there are a few sequences or a couple of sequences in my book that utilize photographic self-portraits. And so I'm going to share a couple of those here in a moment. One of the fun parts of doing readings like this on Zoom is that we have visual capabilities available to us, so we'll utilize those. Before I begin, a couple of notes. I'll say the F slur a couple of times. If that's something you're sensitive to, please just be aware of that and feel free to do what you need to take care of yourself. And then also, um, uh, I'm going to read two sections from a 6-part lyric essay called Faggot that each part addresses and explores one of the clobber passages from the Christian Bible. And so there's 6 of these passages that the Christian church has historically used to condemn queer people. So this sequence kind of explores and maybe interrogates those passages. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And so in this sequence, I photograph a different part of my body, and they're overlaid with the clobber passages that then the poem explores. So this is from part 4. And I'll start by reading the text in the image. Who worshipped and served the creature more than the creator? Men with men working that which is unseemly. 4. In a dream, your father calls to you in Spanish, mijo. Though you do not speak the language he inherited, you hear it as you might hear the sun breathing across your face in the summer, as you might hear suddenly and with the ease of a familiar touch, the letters of your name traced out in the freckles on your skin. Sound fills the darkness as water fills a jar, as blood spills wherever it is poured, flesh rising to meet the chisel that gives it shape. And the word was made flesh and dwelt among us. Spoken by man or by God, who can tell over the shatter of your first cries, frothing from the tide of unclean lips? It is said that we came to exist when language found a body. Let there be, let there be, let there be. You have not seen your father in 3 years, but perhaps you belong, for better, for worse, to those who carve your features with the language they've been given. My son, perhaps you belong to whomever is willing to let your name cross their tongue. And I'm going to jump to part 6. The law is not made for a righteous man. 6. There are words for men like you. Faggot, borrowed from old French, a cross to bear, a stake at which to burn. You are tied to these words by a primordial flame. What then is born of the tongue's snap against your skin? What aroma stirs from the cold, naked mark it leaves behind? 2 G's hooked together in a blanket of vowels. The law is not made for a righteous man. Then who is there to hear it? Homosexual, a new word from the ancient for same. You belong to each other. The smell of smoke without the fire, a shrub alive with the musk of men. The law is not made for a righteous man. Beveled steel takes to stone for this, striking word into flesh, carving out stem and bowl, spine and crossbar, ascender, descender, shaping eye, shoulder, and beak, the bowl, the spur, and the tail, a body self-anointed with the fragrance of the knowledge of its meaning. And before all that, arsenokoites, the marriage of Greek for man and bed, into a word which is still not fully understood, but which, when spoken, take up thy bed and walk, you recognize something and rise. I'm going to read, I think, 2 more poems. I'm going to stay on screen share for just a minute. Throughout the collection, there are lots of ekphrastic poems, which are poems that engage with artwork in some way. And so this painting does not visually appear in my book, like the photographs do. But there is a poem written about this painting, and it's called Jerry. The same internet that teaches me about body neutrality and shows me young boys unabashedly loving each other on TikTok is the same internet where I read about queer futurity and promises deferred, where at Jeffrey James Fox cries when he says, "Society stole that from so many of us." It is the same internet that connects me to Luke, whom I am grabbing a drink with later, and delivers this message from a friend. And this is my coming out text now. And this one before my date. I hope you feel exactly like yourself. Remember your body and breath. My body, which put on clothes this morning, walked to work, took a shit after lunch, and which now stands in front of a portrait of a naked man. His name is Jerry, we are told, though he remains anonymous, his back turned to us, depicted on natural, unfinished wood. He silvers like an emulsion embedded into the birch, its grain indiscernible from the strokes of the brush, paint rippling like light at the bottom of a pool, almost transparent, already a ghost. On our date, Luke, a doctor, reminds me of the pandemic that filled hospitals with beautiful men. His older colleagues still speak of the grief, their fear now more refined. I have studied my back in a mirror, heavy with its own set of losses, already being forgotten by those who come after. Light does not gather in the non-existent dimples above my buttocks. The paint is not so thick at the crown of my head, which is beginning to reveal the grain beneath, and is not so perfectly, I woke up like this, tussled. I am painted with a heavier hand, this body with its elbow creases and its spine, which hurts in the morning and cracks, but only when I twist to the right for some reason. Its questionable moles, dry eyes, and delicate right knee. How absurdly unfinished it is. And yet, if ever I take off my shirt for Luke, please God, in the absence of screens, remember their bodies, their breath. He will see my shoulders falling like wings. Thank you. Thanks. So yeah, I'm gonna read one more if it's okay. And this one is not in the book, um, but it is one that I wrote in an exchange with Maggie, and I actually wrote this one at and about Firefly Farms during my sundress residency, so I thought it would be nice to close with that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, SG, for sharing this hour with me. I'm very much looking forward to hearing you read. Um, yeah, this poem is called Omens. Under a full moon, I listened to a friend cry on the phone. I'm activated, she said, as in her fight or flight response. For much of my life, I have been frozen in the shadows of signs, two flowers growing closely pressed together, the alignment of stars on a particular night, two geese flying overhead like a promise. I once wrote to you that the best advice I've ever been given is not to run away from, but toward. This wisdom has served me well, but what of being carried? When the signposts are indiscernible and there are no guiding stars, what of letting the body relax into smoke like burnt sage unraveling its shroud into the distance? I am staying on a farm in the mountains of East Tennessee, where I climb a half-beaten path to a spring flowing from two sources, a limestone bluff and an opening in the grass. I kneel under the rock each day and cup the water to my lips. It is cold, and I take it in like the only kind of prayer I am able to pray, that of the body. Climb, kneel, drink, move. Both springs cut over watercress and stone before they converge quietly. It's all going to the same place. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Joshua, so much. What an absolute privilege, and having a visual accompaniment too is always a treat. We will roll right along to our final reader, that being the magnificent S.J. Huerta, S.S.G. Huerta, excuse me, not S.J., S.G. Huerta, who is a queer Xicanx writer from Dallas. They are the poetry editor of Abode Press and marketing co-director for Split Lip Magazine. SG is the author of two poetry chapbooks, The Things We Bring With Us from Headmistress Press and Last Stop from Defunkt Magazine, and the forthcoming nonfiction chapbook, Good Grief, from Fifth Wheel Press, to be published in 2025. Their work has appeared in Honey Literary, The Offing, Infrarrealista Review, and elsewhere. They also write about trans and or literary things in their newsletter Transpoetica. Find them at sgwheretowriting.com or in Texas with their partner and two cats. SG, whenever you're ready.
Thanks so much. Man, that was great, Joshua. Like we should all just clap in our separate rooms real quick, but and yeah, shout out to Sundress always. Thank you, Aslan and Gardner, for yeah, putting this together. So okay, I'm not gonna get on a soapbox, I promise. But the I guess just to prepare for what I'm gonna read, I feel like my poetry is very inherently political, just based on my uh personhood as a queer, disabled, Chicanx person. And the things that are happening in Gaza right now, like as this reading is happening, are just horrific. And I just feel like it's important for us to keep talking about it, keep writing our representatives, keep mutual aiding, all the things. And I just wanted to, use this space to keep that in mind and talk about it. And also the Palestinian fight for liberation is inextricably linked to like fights for liberation in America, which is what I've read about. So it's pretty much all connected. Like none of us are free till we all are free, kind of thing. So that said, I write a lot about grief, queerness, madness, all the things. So content warnings for poetry, but I also feel like experiencing poetry is a really like wonderful privilege we have and can make the world a better place. So that said, I'm gonna start with a bipolar poem called I assigned myself to write, and I didn't know the phrase was a bleeding title till you said it, Joshua. So I'm really excited. I know the phrase now. So it's a bleeding title. I assigned myself to write a poem in which I'm bipolar and stable, in which I imagine a future free of sharp metal and burns from a cigarette, in which each birthday preoccupies me with worry over cake flavors and the dykiest fit possible, not the shock of breathing an entire non-fatal 300 plus days again. I want to see a bipolar poem where a lover loves me despite, a bipolar poem where I don't have to repeat myself to be read, A bipolar poem where pronouns, years, traumas collapse, where the only deterioration is of the form, not my mind or my father. A bipolar poem where I remember to eat and sleep and call my mom, mostly. A bipolar poem where mostly is enough. A bipolar poem where repeating myself is by choice, not because you won't listen to it. A bipolar poem in which finally I'm still enough to listen. Thank you. I think so many of my poems are like secretly manifestos of how I approach poetry, which is always fun to write about. This next one is a list poem called Small Violences. Times New Roman. Italicized Spanish. Hispanic Heritage Month. White girl judging me for eating drive-through tacos. White boy coming into my home and demanding a translation. Tinder bios. Public bathrooms. The wrong name again. Border Patrol ads in my Google inbox. Conjuring something into this poem and then realizing, oh wait, that was actually a big violence. Video game lobbies. The origin of the word marijuana. Seriously, look it up. Thank you. Maybe not so fun fact. Seriously, look it up when I'm done talking. Wild. But speaking of the government being Mexican, I'm from Texas, born and raised, and there's a lot of stuff that happens here, such as the heat we were talking about earlier. But I think it's worth fighting for the place you're from and that you want to live in. So this is called, well, content warning for like anti-Mexican racism, but this is called All I Want Is for My Bones to Be Loved by This Earth. 200 years of, as Ted Cruz claims, Texas Rangers keeping Texas safe. I feel crazy reading headlines. First day of Chicano Lit, my junior year of college, the profe passed around a list of relevant people and places for the course. Half of the topics were unfamiliar in this context. Crystal City, Texas Rangers. Others I knew, Brown Berets, United Farm Workers. He yelled at me for hablando inglés cada día, but my anxiety resides in the English language. The day I learned about the massacre at Porvenir, I could not look my two white classmates in the eye. I feel crazy in my head and in my home. When I wake up, I swallow a pill against my throat's will, then slather 20.25 milligrams of testosterone on my shoulders. I place a metallic star sticker on the wall calendar, so everyone knows my head is on straight and my gender is trans for the day. I feel crazy remembering all the steps I have to take to make sure I don't go too crazy. DIY HRT trends. For legal reasons, I am telling you that I am not misusing a controlled substance. I feel crazy when I remember the Alamo. In school, I learned how Mexicans are the enemy. In school, I learned how those Mexicans killed everyone. I learned how those damn Mexicans killed the poor innocent settlers who started this war over the right to keep their slaves. No, wait, actually, I learned it was states' rights. Colonizers starting wars under the guise of independence. I feel crazy. I laugh at armchair archaeologists who think I care if my bones will be identified as male or female in 1,000 years. Just let me rest in the dirt and come back when I care what you think. Thank you. This next poem is like a baby trans poem that I look back on with like a lot of like self-love, I guess. And I actually wrote it in a sundress CrossFit session. They're pretty great for writing new material. And it has an epigraph from this band called the Front Bottoms. And the first two lines and the last line are also from the song. This poem is called When Your Grieving Anthem Becomes Your Transitioning Anthem. I'll feel better, I'll feel better, I'll feel better, I'll feel better. The Front Bottoms, today is not real. If it wasn't for the changes, I would probably die before anyone saw me how I'm supposed to be. I do not hate the woman I was. I simply traded pink, soft, and dreamy for Old Spice Wolfthorn, misogyny for transphobia. Maybe I should dress up my language, my wounds. I want to pass as trans, wear my transness on a harness that digs into my expanding waistline, wear it in my voice that's sure to break soon. Every song escaping my cracked phone speaker is a trans song, actually. Every poem I penned pre-pandemic features a live father and his cis daughter. I would probably die. Thank you. I'm gonna awkwardly sip my coffee real quick. One of my friends, Monica, at a reading they did a while ago, mentioned that they like to bring people who aren't with them to readings. So I'm gonna read a poem by Naomi Shihab Nye. I had the privilege of having workshops with her, and she's just a wonderful teacher, poet, and person who just like empowered me to write about transness and identity without shame. And she's just so kind. Like that is the word I always think of when I think of Naomi. So hopefully her spirit is hear this through her words. I'm going to read her poem in that mysterious word, holy. You might as well take a rotten lemon, squeeze it in your hand. Let the juice trickle down your wrist and arm. Sharp bite of acidity prickling your scratches and scars, and say, I bow down to you. When the almond tree erupts into blossom without help from any people, I bow down. Here we are in the land of sacred story, chant, shrines, altars and grottos, parables, and soldiers in camouflage are carrying guns. What does that say about holy? How much power it doesn't have? Thou shalt not kill crumpled under our feet. Whose religion would you follow? And why do they wear camouflage? We can still see them. Who are they hiding from? The guns are bigger than we are. The tanks are bigger than shrines. Tear gas canisters, grenade casings, littering graves of our ancestors in the cemetery. I bow down. You bow to the big shining platter everyone eats off together. Sit in a circle for your holy rice. Speak after me, holy eggplant, my best angel. Thanks for experiencing Naomi's poem with me. This next poem is also a bit of an older one. It's from my chapbook Last Stop, which I wrote right after my father's death in 2020. And yeah, I guess he's also being summoned into this reading with us too. And I do want to give a content warning that I think the title will make apparent on reading suicide prevention materials and my father's poetry. Yeah. It's okay to talk about. We can all help prevent. Anyone could be struggling with. Attempts have a ripple effect. Frantically piecing his story together with broken lines and half-written letters. He wrote, whether the storm weathers me or I the storm. The storm strangled him, me, us. Depressed, take a screening today. Mid-August, mid-pandemic, amidst headlines of horror. Know the warning signs, help save lives. One death every 40 seconds. He wrote, dead fish don't swim. Thank you. I honestly can't remember if I mentioned that it's a found poem of both the things I was reading after he died and his poetry, which none of which was published. So I just it was kind of interesting to find a way to bring it to light after his death. And if if he has in fact been summoned to this reading, sorry for this one, Dad, but I think it's a pretty good poem. So it's called On Supposedly Becoming a Woman. The humor and the sadness goes hand in hand for me, and I feel like poetry is the perfect like place for that. So I'm glad y'all are down for that. Yeah. On Supposedly Becoming a Woman. I'm dancing with my father at the quinceañera he refused to pay for. fucked up wintry theme, the scent of Bud Light personified. He hates being Mexicano, speaks worse Spanish than me. His tongue stumbles over double R's, but I know not to judge him, for this at least. My yellow dress billows. The corset slowly suffocates the gender out of me. I am Belle from Beauty and the Beast, but shorter, more Mexicana and three-dimensional. He thinks I'm his daughter, and maybe I am, but that's between us. Everything is relative. I don't even know what song the quiet DJ is spinning as I step on my dad's feet and I smell that Bud Light on his breath, always on his breath. Thank you. A happier trans poem. This is called Note to Dysphoric Self. You don't have to like yourself, but promise me you'll love yourself, even in this state. When there's a foot of brown crumpled binding tape on your bathroom trash, broken skin screaming against your chest, a cautionary constellation, at least you smell like coconut oil, woodsy deodorant, and your favorite shitty beer. Some guys are willing, no, happy to call you their guy in between soft kisses. Trace the knife tattooed on your thick tan thigh, emblem of your vision of masculinity. Sharp but shrouded in fresh flowers, cold but ever blooming. Don't forget tomorrow is trash day, like you do each Wednesday night, because damn it, you are so masked in your boxers and hoodie under the full moon. Look at that gorgeous dyke rolling the bin to the edge of the driveway. You are so you, even when you don't think you deserve to be called your name. Thank you. And I have two more. One of which I haven't read to anyone who isn't my partner or our cats. So I'm excited. I feel like readings are a great place to try new shit. Another bleeding title. It's called How to Stop Being a Depressed Piece of Art. The internet mindlessly finishes my sentences before they are thoughts, tracks my love life, steals my job. Artists aren't valued by capitalism. I'm tired of bringing up capitalism in my art. It's almost as tired as I am. Maybe I am a depressed piece of art. Soy una estatua de la Virgen, rose-scented tears streaming desde mis ojos. Or maybe I'm La Pietà, but broken from the start. The late Carrie Fisher said, I want life to be art. The late Toni Morrison said, your life is already artful. How to stop missing you without being able to make art about it. I make other art, you tell me it's good, but I want to be told that I'm good or good enough. People see my art and I want to throw all my pages and colors and scraps a going away party. How to stop crying over the past when I'm at protests. I know it's inappropriate, which makes me cry more. The guilt. Have I ever made guilt-free art? The guilt-ridden guy in me clarifies. I cry because protests always makes me picture everything I love and will ever love. Estoy luchando por mis amantes, pero sometimes don't finish that sentence for me. How to stop thinking my depression is stupid. How to convince my critics, myself, that I'd still create art minus psychosis, maybe, probably, definitely, perhaps. How to write a long poem about being a definitely depressed, maybe piece of art without boring the reader or listener. Fear of you finding out how badly I want to make art. Thank you. Thanks, y'all. This has been a joy. I think poetry is such an important force in the world, and I'm just glad to spend my Sunday evening experiencing it with y'all. This last poem is this just like feels like a very serendipitous reading. My friend and I have been writing a collaboration on like queerness and being raised Catholic for like a year now. And this is the final thing I wrote for that project. And I've titled it Before I Go. I believe in people. I believe in love. I believe in doing the kind thing even when it hurts. I believe some personal hurt can be redemptive. I believe that love is a verb. I believe that love is a verb that you choose actively every single day. I believe in decolonialism. I believe liberation is possible. I believe we have to fight for liberation. I believe we spend too much time fighting each other when we should be fighting fascists. I believe liberation is rooted in love, and I believe love hurts sometimes, I believe in prayer, but maybe not the kind I was raised with. I believe writing is prayer. I believe protesting outside of City Hall, the Capitol, tech corporations, universities is prayer. I believe prayer is important, but not as important as people. I believe in communion, lowercase c, meaning I believe in community. I believe in people, and I believe in people, and I believe in people. Thank you.
SG, thank you so, so much. What a lovely reading. And gosh, what a broad variety of poems that we've covered too across both readings. I'm so blessed to have heard everything that y'all have given us. And on that note, we will now move into any questions that folks might have about the wonderful work that we've just heard, or the personal lives, not too personal maybe, or I don't know, say whatever you want to say within respectfulness. About Joshua and SG. If you have written something down that you would like to ask yourself, you are more than willing to ask away just by popping up a little hand. You can also throw it in the chat, and Gardner and I can ask on your behalf. But we'll get kickstarted with something that we like to ask all of our readers, which is generally, what have you been reading recently, and or what are you obsessed with right now? What does not leave the forefront of your mind? And we'll start with Joshua and then go to SG.
Yeah, such a good question. Most recently, I've been reading books, poetry collections of peers. So I've been reading Kay Ivor's collection that came out just a couple years ago, Matthew Gelman's Before Light, which was released just around the same time that my book was released. And I've got a stack on my bed. This kind of answers both questions, but I've got a stack on my bed of things that I want to start reading soon to activate my obsessions that I'm thinking about for what's next in my poems. And I'm thinking about impressionism and looking and just trying to be present. So I've got a couple of books of impressionism on my nightstand. I've got gosh, my mind's gone blank. I have what is his name? I hate when this happens when somebody asks you what you're reading and then it's like, have I ever read a book? James Schuyler, who is a New York school poet, and I've been wanting to think about writing longer poems. And he has a really long poem called Hymn to Life that I've been reflecting on. Gertrude Schnackenberg, who has also written long poems and has utilized rhyme. So I'm thinking about those things as well. And regard books aside, I'm thinking about like queer bodies in public spaces and queer expressions of queerness in public spaces, but also just like being alive in public and what that means and feels like. Yeah, so that's what I'm reading and what's on my mind.
Oh wow, I had my list ready while you were talking because I knew the same thing would happen to me. I'm reading El Rey of Gold Teeth by Reyes Ramirez. He's also a Texan poet. Incredible book. Oh my gosh, my brain. Oh yeah, I recently finished reading Dayspring by Anthony Oliveda, and it's like, speaking of queer, have you read it, Joshua?
No, but I want to. I have it pulled up, bookmarked on my phone. I need to order it.
It's so good. It's like, I'm really bad at reading long books. It's like this thick, but I read the whole thing in like a week. And it's about Jesus and one of the disciples, and it is like very gay, like very gay. But also so poetic. Really well done. And in terms of other obsessions, I've been listening to a lot of Kendrick Lamar's back catalog now, thanks to recent events. Always a good time to revisit a great. And I feel like music has always inspired my writing, so it's a thing I'm obsessed with right now.
Thank you both so much. Bianca, if you would like to ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. I actually have a question for each poet, but I'll just start with my question for Joshua first and then have other people ask questions. I don't want to hog the mic. But Joshua, I wanted to ask if you could talk a little bit more. I'm so interested in like the epistolary, like letter form that you were talking about with your friend Maggie, was it? And so I just want to know like what drew you to that to do with like a friend of yours and like what that brought out in your work that you feel like wouldn't have been brought out otherwise.
Absolutely. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat. So it started, I guess the source of inspiration was this similar exchange in the New Yorker between Natalie Diaz and Ada Limon. And they kind of did this back and forth where one wrote a poem and then the other person responded in a poem format. So they're like letters, but you're writing poems. And it was like the thick of the pandemic, like, just a month or two in, when we were all really homebound and really thirsty for connection. And Maggie had the idea of starting this letter exchange and after that model. And honestly, it was one of the most rewarding creative experiences I've ever had, as well as just a really beautiful communion between friends. And from those letters, I mean, I want to say like maybe 30 pages of my book came from that. I the poems weren't necessarily that long when I wrote them to Maggie, but they started something that became more, and so it was a really beautiful experience. Just practically speaking, the way that we did it, I wrote a poem one week, and then Maggie would write the next week, and then I would write the following week, and give or take, right? We weren't super perfect about the schedule all the time. Yeah, but it was a beautiful experience, and if there's anybody that you have that you'd be interested in doing that with, I highly recommend it. You get things that you wouldn't have gotten by yourself because you're responding to somebody else directly and a line or an image or an idea that they brought up. And so it was really generative in that way. Yeah.
And Bianca, did you say you had a question for SG as well?
I do, yes. Thank you. So SG, I want to know, like, whenever you have a poem like tugging at your brain, like, where is it where you like, what do you find yourself doing first whenever you're like met with the page? Like, where does your mind go to?
Okay, yeah, I think a lot of the times things come to me like at very inconvenient times. Like my poor partner will be mid-conversation and I'm like, wait, hold up, something I just said is actually kind of brilliant. So then I have to run to my nearest notebook and um I think I just always need to have something near me that I can write with in case that happens, and I feel like I just have to chase it. Um like the second to last poem I read. But sometimes if I feel like I want to write towards something and I can't figure it out, I write by hand first. So I'll just like keep rewriting that line, like that, the initial thing that I was thinking, and keep writing it and keep writing it, and then eventually something comes after, or like maybe something comes after and it's not great, but it's like, um, it almost feels like practicing for like, okay, obviously not an athlete, but I imagine sports teams do this type of thing where they're like, okay, let's practice, but we're not really gonna like you know, try to beat each other, but I guess like that. Yeah. By the time it's typed up, it's a totally different iteration because I like to handwrite a couple drafts first.
All right, and we have time for a few more questions if anyone's got one that they are just jonesing to ask.
Actually, one of my favorite questions asked kind of piggybacks right off what you just said, SG, which is what is your preferred medium for writing, whether that's by hand, by like phone notes, Word doc, Google Doc, and how do you think that affects the content itself? That goes for both of you. Whoever wants to answer first.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm not sure why it is. I just feel like it's easier to like follow a poetic thought if I'm handwriting first. And it kind of makes revision feel more embodied. Like I guess over the years I've developed like if someone were to look at a first draft of something, it would look unintelligible, but I have like my own like shorthand system of like this is what I want to change or like move things around. So it feels very physical, like, oh, I'm crossing out this word and putting a better one, or like I'm putting brackets so I can put a word here eventually. Um, which I don't know, it just makes me feel very connected to what I'm writing. Uh I do have like a disability issue where sometimes I can't write physically, so voice to text is what I do, but that's kind of becoming fun for me because then I have to say every piece of punctuation out loud. So that's become really interesting to be like question mark, dot, 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 or like you have to say it like faster for like the AI to know what you're telling it to do. It's yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's a very embodied experience for me writing first drafts at least before the final thing's typed up.
Yeah, wish that I could say that I hand wrote my poems because I do really like that idea of the body like being more a part of the process. But I'm Google Docs. I will like SG said, like sometimes it comes to you like in a inconvenient moment. So I definitely utilize the notes app on my phone, but that's usually just a line here or there, and then I'll rush to a Google Doc and start working there. And for me, that's helpful because I think I can type faster. And so it's like about just like getting as much on the page as quickly as possible. And then I do like a lot of like, to me, it's like puzzle work. And it's just with my brain, it's easier to do on a computer just to like rearrange and move things around. But yeah.
Wonderful. And one more question, anyone? I'm gonna let it hover. I'm gonna let it simmer. If not, I've got one, but we would love to hear from you. Or if y'all want to ask each other questions, you can also do that.
I do have a question. If anyone else, I'll ask real slow in case anyone else has one. Because I'm my first full length, I'm recently starting to send it out on submission. How has having that out in the world affected your work now?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So my book came out in March, and so it still feels very new to me and is taking up a lot of my time, whether that be for readings, which I love, and or like sending out emails or trying to make connections to promote or get people to look at it. Speaking of which, I'm gonna drop a link. I was at a panel yesterday and they're like, just be shameless. And I'm trying because it's really hard for me, but there's a link to my book in the chat if anybody's interested. But yeah, so I feel like, I work a 9 to 5 and I only have so much energy and so much time after that for writing. And by writing, I mean anything to like reading, looking at art, emails, administration, and or like the actual act of like writing out a new poem. And I feel like most of my time is going to figuring out how to do this book thing. That said, in a way, it's been kind of refreshing because I have this like hunger and thirst to get back to the page, and my mind is working, and I'm feeling really hopeful that that kind of forced distance or like having to take that time away is letting my brain do some things that I'm hopeful will prepare me for what's next. Yeah, so I mean it you know it kind of gets in the way of like more writing but it's good. It's I'm grateful, and yeah. Yeah. SG, maybe I can throw the question kind of back at you for people who in are in the stage that you're in or who are working toward that. But I mean, what is your method, if you have one, to submissions? How is that process going for you? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, how do I say this? I feel like because of everything I said kind of at the top about how like my politics and my poetry feel very inseparable, I feel like it's really important to me to be super super discerning about where, and I think everyone should, like, where you're putting your work. Like, I love Sundress. I love everything Sundress does, and so that's why it's so wonderful to be a part of this. But it's been kind of like just seeing my values are in line, or especially as like a trans author, I feel like you especially have to be discerning. Like, I don't know, is this a place that publishes like people that don't like trans people? Because that's kind of like, that doesn't feel safe. And because my work is so deeply tied to those things, I just feel like it's important that it's with places that will like not just like honor me as a person, but other authors and marginalized writers. But it's been kind of like I feel like I'm at the point where this thing is out on submission and I just want to write new stuff, and I can feel a new book formulating, and so I'm getting kind of like ready for it to be not just mine, so that I can start working on this other thing. But it's been I don't know, it feels like having a complete book that isn't out in the world feels kind of cool though, because it's like, oh, I made this thing and I can't wait to see what happens with it. And that's exciting. Um, and if anyone is also in that position or will be, Emily Stoddard runs a really useful poetry Headmistress Press. They published my chapbook. I don't know why I haven't thought of this. They're wonderful people. I adore them. But Emily Stoddard runs a newsletter about presses with like who have fee waivers and low submission fees, and support marginalized writers because it gets like so very expensive. So that's another aspect of it that I am finding out. But yeah, thanks for asking that.
Thank you both so much. We are about out of time now, but it has been such a privilege and pleasure to host y'all and hear your wonderful words and insightful thoughts about your craft and process. Before we sign off, I wanted to throw it out there for y'all to plug anything and everything, and also where can people find you online and otherwise?
Yeah, well, I dropped the link to my book in the chat. So if of interest, please consider it. And then you can find me. I'm probably most active on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, X, wishy-washy with that these days. But yeah, would love to connect. I'll put my handle in the chat so that I'm easy to find. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I'm kind of social media adverse. But I run a newsletter where I talk about transness and poetry and all the things. Yeah, the link is in the chat and it can also be found on my website. If you're in Central Texas, I'm always where the literary stuff is happening, I'm there. Yeah, thank you all so much.
Wonderful. A round of applause. This has been episode 169 of Poets in Pajamas featuring Joshua Garcia and S.G. Huerta. Please join us again in 2 weeks' time for episode 170 featuring the unbelievable Charles Jensen and C.E. Janicek, two poets who are not to be missed. But until then, we're signing off for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Well,
All right.
thanks.
Great job, folks. Y'all are champions, and we will be in